Lantern Nights. A Gatsby reflection. Have you ever chased a vision so bright it threatened to swallow the daylight around it? If your answer is even a tentative yes, then you already share common ground with Jay Gatsby, no matter how distant the jazz age might seem. I invite you to stroll through Gatsby's glittering world, linger long enough to hear the music fade, and leave carrying only the lessons worth keeping. Some of these lessons sparkle, others sting. All of them belong to anyone who has ever staked heart and hope on a dream. When the lights first dazzled, spectacle can mesmerize us, but silence is where truth slips in. West Egg bloomed like a carnival on midsummer nights. Paper lanterns, tiny moons in scarlet jade and gold, swung lazily from the elms. A cornet crooned, a jazz drum answered, and the Long Island Sound seemed to tap its watery foot in time. The air smelled of cut grass, salt, and champagne sweating on ice. Laughter rippled across the lawn in bright waves, and strings of electric bulbs traced constellations overhead, as if someone had dragged the night sky downward for easier viewing. Yet beneath the shimmer lay a hush, the fragile silence between chords when even the tide held its breath. Street lamps across the bay blinked like cautious fireflies. Somewhere far from the music, a screen door slammed and a dog barked. Those small, ordinary sounds reminded me that every spectacle needs a background of quiet to keep from dissolving into glare. Meeting the man behind the magic. Gatsby often watched his own party from the terrace, white flannel pockets, restless gaze, like a director judging a scene that still lacked its headline star. Now and then someone would venture, say, "Aren't you Gatsby?" He would meet the question with a smile so personal you felt dubbed into a private order of chivalry. People straightened their shoulders, absurdly honored to be acknowledged by the host they had come to see without quite believing he existed. Beneath that genial brilliance, impatience flickered at the corners of his mouth. Every minute without its promised miracle was a grain of sand slipping irretrievably through the hourglass. It struck me that Gatsby was less a man enjoying his success than a man carefully feeding coal into a furnace, frantic to keep the fire hot until something or someone arrived to witness its glow. A voice that rang like coin on silver. Hope unchecked can turn even music into menace. Later, on a veranda scented with heliotrope, vanilla sweet purple blossoms that bloomed toward dusk, Gatsby confessed the source of his vigil. "A girl across the bay," he said, with a voice like money dropped on a silver plate. He spoke her name as if it were a secret incantation, capable of raising entire continents from the sea. Rolls Royces, marble staircases, pyramids of fruit glazed to jewel brightness, all of it, he admitted, was arranged to draw that single voice a few hundred yards nearer. Across the water, a green light pulsed at the end of her dock. Gatsby's eyes pinned it like a sailor to Polaris. I watched him measure the distance, convinced that wealth could bend geography. In his mind, the light was not a simple beacon, but the promise of a future so real he could almost walk across its reflection. Extravagance as prayer. No fortune can purchase yesterday. Guests labeled the parties decadent. Gatsby called them necessary. When the orchestra paused, servants relit candles before the wicks cooled. Silence, he feared, would let doubt creep into the seams. Watching him, I wondered whether money had become his rosary, each dollar a bead clicked through restless fingers. The menu read like scripture. Whole hams glazed in clove-studded honey, salmon shimmering on silver trains, champagne chilled in marble troughs that might once have held Roman fountains. But underneath the laughter I sensed a private liturgy. Gatsby glancing always toward the far shore, musicians striking up a fresh number before the last chord faded, as though quiet were a mortal danger, valets polishing rails already bright enough to blind. The entire apparatus existed to keep faith alive for one more hour, one more night, until the past, transformed into the present, could step through the French doors unannounced. Rumors take flight. Mystery feeds on silence as surely as truth starves. No sooner did the music swell than gossip fluttered through the ballroom. Spy, murderer, Oxford man. One guest insisted Gatsby was a cousin of the Kaiser, exiled with a trunk of rubies. Another whispered he had discovered a method for turning seawater into gasoline. The more extravagant the rumor, the more avidly it was repeated. Mystery, we discovered, excused our own appetites. So long as Gatsby remained unknowable, we were free to drink his champagne and toast his legend. Gatsby never corrected the stories. He let speculation swirl about him the way a ballroom dancer lets the music carry her along, because the melody, not the spectators, was the thing that mattered. Each new invention added another layer of gauze between him and the daylight. Truth starves without oxygen. Gossip, on the other hand, feeds on fancy and thrives in dim corners. When summer turns its face. Late August arrived in a crisp linen suit, trailing the faint scent of wood smoke. The orchestra packed its instruments earlier, the bar stopped restocking champagne, orange halves once pulped by the hundred dried to husks in kitchen bins. One Wednesday afternoon I found Gatsby hunched over Long Island Railroad timetables as though printed schedules might unlock a human heart. The party tents, recently so billowed with laughter, sagged like sails on a windless sea. Daylight demands plainness, and the persona Gatsby had polished all season could not survive the glare. Yet he persisted, ordering fresh shirts from London, new flowers from the hothouse, Hope's frantic carpenter patching the stage even as the audience slipped out the side doors. It dawned on me that illusions are costly, not merely in dollars, but in that quiet erosion of self required to keep them shining. Faith at the water's edge. On the night he waited alone in his pool, the garden lights clicked on automatically, casting soft halos across the water. Crickets chirred uncertainly, somewhere a screen door creaked. Fully dressed, Gatsby floated on an air mattress, unwilling to concede the season's end. Above him, a lone airplane etched a dissolving white line across the sky. He tracked its progress with the devotion of an astrologer reading omen in cloud dust. Faith that refuses compromise can build empires or leave them in ruins. Gatsby's faith glowed incandescent, demanding the universe answer in full or not at all. When no answer came, the garden seemed to hold its breath, as if the night itself could not bear to break his vigil. Echoes after the curtain falls. Weeks later, newspapers finished with him, and the mansion stood dark against wind. Sometimes I walked to the shore at dusk. The sound lay flat as hammered tin. Across the water, the green light still winked, indifferent now to the hopes once fastened to it. I said Gatsby's name aloud, hoping to keep alive that fierce capacity for wonder he had carried like a torch. The current nudged me homeward, as currents do. We are born ceaselessly into the present, yet we carry what we dared to believe. I realized then that Gatsby's greatest legacy was not his fortune or even his legend. It was the reminder that we are all capable, at least once, of believing the world can be made anew. The long ride west. Carry your longing lightly, but never let it go. Autumn found me on a westbound train, fields flickering past like yellow film frames. In the dining car mirror, I caught my reflection. Older, yes, but tempered, iron-cooled after sudden heat. I tried to write letters to friends who had scattered since Gatsby's death, but the addresses felt unreal, like props from a play struck after closing night. Yet Gatsby remained, an afterimage that lingered when I closed my eyes. I thought of him on clear evenings when the stars seemed brittle enough to shatter, and remembered how he stood at the terrace rail, staring across the dark water as though sheer will might bridge the distance. Slowly it dawned on me that we are measured, finally, not by the reach of our wealth or the success of our desires, but by the tenacity of our longing, the stubborn, incandescent faith that life can still surprise us. Closing reflection. Stand by your own stretch of water, river, sea, city pavement, and neon, and ask, which dreams still beckon? Carry your faith lightly, polish it often, and guard against letting it swallow the living, breathing self that must carry it. Gatsby's vision burned too hot, yet in that blaze he showed us the human capacity to imagine something better than what is. May each sunrise give you the courage to sift illusion from hope, and each nightfall remind you of the steady green light that patience, more than money, can keep aglow. And should you find yourself on a quiet shore, listening for a voice across the dark water, remember this. The current always moves, but belief, tended kindly, can shine like a lantern no wind can extinguish. 1-minute takeaway. Gatsby's parties dazzle, but their silences hint at emptiness. His fortune is less about wealth than a prayer to retrieve lost time. Rumors protect him, truth starves in the shadows. Autumn exposes the cost of living for illusion. Lesson, guard your dreams, but never let them eclipse the self who dreams. Then even scandal sheets and shifting tides cannot dim the light you carry.